Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we talk about movies on this show. And this episode is the winner of our Patreon vote every month on patreon.com/mailfuzztv. Our patrons will vote between 4 movies, and we'll do the winner the following month. And this is the winner of The Silence of the Lambs. All the 4 options were all films from our top 50 of the 90s that we hadn't done yet. There was like 4 of the highest ranking. And Lambs is the one that pulled through. So, just barely, might I add, it was a very close vote. It's probably one of the most even votes. I mean, we've had very even votes between like 2 of the options, where it's been like almost 50-50. This was very even across all 4.
Can you remember what the other contenders were?
Truman Show, Eyes Wide Shut, and Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
Very, very even. But we'll start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we go into spoilers in the middle. And we'll get into it. So, this is, of course, the thriller that won the Big 5 at the Academy Awards, meaning Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Script, and Best Picture. The Big 5, which not a lot of films have done, at least not recently, certainly.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. Which is kind of a good thing in a weird way. I feel like sometimes they settle in and just pick the same film for every category, because I like that one.
Yeah, I feel like it's been it's especially the director and film. Those Best Picture, those two used to kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, which is funny because I feel like out of any of the awards, those are the ones that should always line up.
In theory,
theory,
but
yeah.
I like that they're splitting it up a bit. Maybe maybe that is the best direction, but maybe overall this film's better, right?
Yeah. I think it's happening too much, though. I feel like typically best direction should lead to best film, but there are maybe some cases, some years where, no, this film has so many good other elements that it kind of lifts it up above the best directed film. But
Yeah.
it should be reasonably often that it's the best director as well. But regardless, obviously this is the Hannibal Lecter movie. This is Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, Buffalo Bill, played by Ted Levine, and my cat is being a pest and kind of sitting in front of the monitor
Because cats are awful.
So he's getting shifted over there because he's been a pest.
Right. Throw out the window.
No, shut up. Shut
Let's
up.
try.
But yeah, so obviously this is a classic. We don't really have to tell you that this is good. I feel like that's kind of pointless. With this one, it's kind of pointless. It's like, Silence of the Lambs is a well-regarded film.
As you just said, won the Big 5.
Yeah, not that winning Oscars is necessarily always a sign of a great movie.
It's not, but it's usually a sign it's well regarded.
It is, but so many winners are forgotten.
Well, it's true.
This one is one that did not get forgotten. Now, this is one that is stayed in pop culture and has been relevant. There's been many more Hannibal Lecter, adaptations and sequels and spin-offs and all sorts, to varying degrees of success. Although none of them is good, I don't think. I would say. In fact, my 2 favorite Hannibal Lecter, products, if you will, are this and Manhunter. And Manhunter came first, so nothing's ever lived up to these for me since.
Fair enough. I would include the first season or 2, maybe season 2 of Hannibal, the TV show, alongside this for me.
It was okay. I thought it was overrated, but it's okay.
Yeah, fair enough. But also just the book. It's kind of up there.
But which book?
This one, Silence of the Lambs.
Okay, sure.
Sorry, I thought we were specifically talking about this.
No, it just feels weird.
Yeah.
I'm not really talking about the books measure up to the
Well, fair
films.
No, I mean I've read the book of this one, and I think that's pretty damn excellent too.
Cool. I mean, I'd assume it was because the movie ended up being pretty good.
We're talking about favorite Hannibal media.
Books
are included in that.
I was just talking about the visual, the movies and TV, the stuff that's came since. The book was before this, presumably.
Well, yeah, but so was Manhunter, as you said.
Well, yeah, but I mentioned Manhunter because Manhunter's bloody good. In fact, I want to start this off with a bold statement. I like Manhunter more than Silence of the Lambs. You can fight me, people. You can fight me. Now, this does not mean that I in any way do not think Silence of the Lambs is fantastic, because it is fantastic. Do not read me incorrectly here. I just love Manhunter as well. A little bit more, in fact. It's slick, the 80s style, Michael Mann, the synth. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. But But not to discount this one, because the direction in this is immaculate. I'd forgotten how well directed it was. Right from the start of this film, there's just little things that are telling you parts of the story, and this is something that I feel that so many modern movies don't do, is they don't use the visuals to tell parts of the story. One of the first shots in this movie, after or actually not even after, during the opening titles, because the titles are playing as Jodie Foster's running up to the Quantico, which I only know it's called Quantico now because Quantico became such a thing. I'm thanking Stream Queen specifically for constantly bringing up Quantico.
It's true. It's worth knowing, though. It's useful information.
Yeah, that and I think I don't know if it was ever mentioned in Mindhunter, but I feel like my understanding of the FBI has been catapulted somewhat by Mindhunter, particularly in the genre of this movie's story.
That probably helped. Not really consciously, but it's probably just in there.
Yeah, like watching this, I was actually thinking at the start, oh, that Mindhunter, when it was set, was only 20 years before this. This is the dawn of the serial killer, and because she wants to get into criminal behavior and psychology, and the dawn of that was just 20 years ago in terms of how we think about it. So
pretty recent, really, when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, hell, it's closer to the dawn of it than it is now from this movie. This movie's now older than the gap was from this movie to when that happened. So puts things in perspective. But which, by the way, that's one of the things that makes you feel really old when you realise it's been longer since 2000, since it was from, I don't know, Back to the Future 2000, right? Just as an example.
Sure.
It's actually longer now since we're past. I don't know. We're getting old. Is what I'm saying.
Do you want to know a really crazy one of those facts?
Oh, go on.
Cleopatra, ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Cleopatra is closer to us than she was to the building of the pyramids. That's how old the pyramids are.
Okay. I was about to say, if you're going to try and tell me that something's closer to us than Cleopatra, I'm going to tell you to shove off. I was like, where are you going with this? That doesn't make me feel that old because it's all ancient. It's fine. But
no. But just it's one of those crazy facts. It's like, man, those pyramids are really bloody old.
Yeah.
And ancient Egypt lasted a long ass time.
Oh, it's the same with even just dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were around for a long time.
Yeah. But I can comprehend Egypt more than I can dinosaurs.
Well, this is true. Yeah. Well, Egypt left buildings and pyramids to look at. Dinosaurs, not so much.
I think there's some bones, but
yeah. So anyway, but that's just ran to my head. But the point I was getting at, the visual shot is she gets into an elevator and she's surrounded by men, and they're all 2 foot taller than her. She's tiny in the frame. And right away, you get one of the themes of this movie is that she's a woman in a man's world and that she's so much smaller and she's an underdog, right? Right away, that shot tells you that. Without a single word spoken, you get the themes of this movie. And I feel like it's just that type of concise visual storytelling that tells us so much information. The famous one to always go back to when you're making fun of Star Wars is that if you go back to the original Star Wars, the opening shot of A New Hope tells you the themes of the film without saying anything. And then you go to the prequels, or you go to the new ones, and there's just so much exposition and talking and stuff to set things up. The opening shot.
Sure.
You remember the opening shot of the first Star Wars?
I do. Yes. Yeah. The big ship coming over the little one.
Yeah, the little one, right? So it tells you right now. Okay, little rebels on the run, big Imperial. They're in charge.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You get it immediately. Same thing here. You get immediately the world she's in and why she's an underdog. And then Scott Glenn shows up, which is weird because I'm so used to him being old and having facial hair. And I'm like, damn, was he ever young, though? I mean, he's much younger in this, but he's still not young.
No, he's not.
He's still, what, 50 in this? Pushing 50?
It's hard to picture him in his 20s.
It is. He just looks like a different guy, probably, I assume, in his 20s. But
yeah, probably.
But he's got this idea. You do this criminal behaviour stuff, and he sends her off to Hannibal Lecter because there might be some information we can gather about Buffalo Bill. Not that he tells her all this immediately, necessarily.
Yeah, no, he's like, no, it's just routine. We just gotta do this stuff.
Yeah, because as he puts it later, if I sent you in there with a clear agenda, he would have smelled it out, and he would have, turned it on you and, hung you out to dry. Yeah. Whereas you get in there not knowing, led naturally to some information and, yada yada. But yeah, it's funny actually watching this again now. And it's been a long time since I've watched it, I think. I mean, I've seen it a few times, obviously, but it's been a while. And I think I forgot how much how much the sexism of the job she's in, and the fact that she's a woman doing this, plays such a big role in the movie, almost to a point where it actually feels like a bigger deal than the actual Buffalo Bill case, to an extent.
It does, yeah.
Because the Buffalo Bill case, it's there for the threat and what's going on, but we go entire portions of the film without even thinking about it, because we're dealing with Hannibal Lecter, we're dealing with going to talk to him, we're dealing with, and of course the famous disgusting scene where she goes to visit him and the other cellmate throws semen at her. Again, the idea that she's somewhere that's dangerous, it's hostile territory, and she's having to really like fight through to stake a claim and prove a point.
Even just when she goes down to meet Hannibal, before she leaves the doctor, he's like, hey, Crawford was smart sending you. Oh yeah, pretty young lady.
Yeah.
Immediately, he's not even blunt about it.
Oh, even before that, he tries to say, hey, you're going to be here overnight. Town can be quite charming if you've got the right guide.
Yeah.
And then she shoots him down. She's hit on. She's talked to differently.
You have a guy later who, in the middle of the case, starts hitting on her, and she's like, "Are you hitting on me now?" Like in the middle of the investigation.
Yeah. To be fair to that one felt a bit more genuine, and she's felt a bit more receptive to it, because she seems to know this guy. This seems to be someone she's actually comfortable with. From before.
But more just the idea of that's how common it is.
Oh, sure, yeah. Because
it's ever prevalent.
Because that one stood out to me because it wasn't met with the same apprehension. It wasn't met with the same uncomfort. She smiled and said, "Are you flirting with me?" And he's like, "Yeah." But she seems to know who these two are. She's familiar with these guys. These are friends that she knows from the academy or wherever. Whereas so many other points in this film, she's treated differently. And I'd actually forgotten about a moment, because when they go to investigate one of the bodies, which happens to be in her home state, not her hometown specifically, but her home state of West Virginia. She goes there with them to check in the body, and there's a moment where Crawford's like, "Oh, we should speak in private to the local sheriff or whatever," and they go in a room and leave her standing outside, surrounded by just uniformed cops, and she's on her own. And I remember that scene very vividly. It's a very prominent little moment where it feels very like, no, shouldn't be in there, because we're talking about sexual crimes, and she won't be able to handle it because she's a little woman. Right? We can't do that. But the scene that I'd forgotten about is afterwards, when they're on the way back, and he's like, "Hey, that really bothered you, right? Me like leaving you outside." Like, he recognised that, and she says, "Yeah, it matters. Like, all the younger cops see how you treat me. It matters." And I'm like, I forgot it made that point, that she actually just outright points out.
He apologizes.
Yeah, but
He's like, "Okay, I get it. I won't do it again."
I'd forgotten that she specifically pointed out why it was a big deal, beyond just the almost just the embarrassment of being shunned out of the conversation. Like, beyond that, just the knock-on effect of it. And I'd forgotten that it actually brought that up.
I think it's also intentionally, when he mentioned, because of the nature of the conversation, is why she's being left out. Because if he didn't say anything and just said, "Okay, no, we should speak in private," your assumption would be, okay, she's a trainee, right? She's young. She's not privy to all the information, maybe. But instead, he makes the point of saying, "No, it's too delicate. Let's go a separate for it." And obviously, they all hear this.
Yeah. So this is a big running theme, and of course, Hannibal uses this as well. As soon as she comes down to see him, he mentions her perfume, your cheap white trash, all these things. And he gets very racy at one point when he's like, "Oh, do you think Crawford thinks about you sexually? Do you think he imagines doing things to you?" And he says, "Is that why he's giving you this opportunity? Because he's attracted to you?" And keeps bringing it up and pushing her buttons. Although with Lecter, of course, you get the impression that he's intentionally doing that to try and get a reaction. Like,
Yeah, he doesn't feel like he cares himself. It's more just he knows that's what'll get the reaction.
Yeah, he's provoking her in the scene, which obviously leads us to talking about Anthony Hopkins, who... He's fantastic in this movie, but I always forget why he's fantastic. I always forget the little moments that make it perfect.
I think you forget the stare.
It's the stare, and then going back to the direction, the intense close-up on his face, which is there for a lot of his scenes, where it's right in his face.
Him just monologuing right into a camera.
Yeah.
And just almost never blinking.
One of my favourite moments of the first time she goes to see him is when he describes, oh, you're wearing Evian skin cream, and sometimes you're wearing it. He names a perfume. I can't remember what it was. It's like, oh, he names perfume,
and
he's like, but not today. And it's the way he looks down and smiles as he says, but not today, where he knows us so well just from like this 2-minute meeting.
It's everything. Obviously, you know, we talk about the stare, the voice, you know, the performance he gives, but it's, you know, where he steps up to the glass to sniff the holes at the top. It's the whole motion of it. It's something that it doesn't stick in your mind usually. You know, you have the moments in your head, of course, but the little things don't.
Yeah, and then the way he analyzes when she tries to say, hey, look at this question, is like, oh, you were doing so well, you were being courteous, you were responding well to me, and you know, he analyzes her performance in the interview.
He gets so objective, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's kind of gold, but he provokes that as well, and of course the idea that the villain is, I mean, as Lecter points out, do you know what, I'm just gonna give a spoiler warning. I feel like it's weird to dance around it with this one because it's Silence of the Lambs. If you haven't seen Silence of the Lambs, go watch Silence of the Lambs and come back. But he, like, as he points out, is that Buffalo Bill thinks he's transsexual, but he's not really. He thinks he is because he feels like he doesn't belong, and that's what he's pouring his energy into, because it's a vine to grab onto, essentially.
Yeah.
But you know, bringing that in and bringing the fact that he's hunting down women specifically, and the idea of treating women, because there's that scene where her mother, because it turns out she's the woman he's kidnapped is the daughter of the senator or whatever, and the mother's on TV, like, you know, saying, oh, Catherine this, Catherine that, and I say, oh, that's really smart. She keeps using the name because, you know, it's harder to butcher someone when you think of them as a person. So the idea of these extremes, and it's funny watching this movie in a post Me Too world. I think you do actually analyze these things a little bit differently and look about how does the sexism that Clarice is going through in her job, and then the actual attack and the extremism of this, you know, this psychopath going after someone, like, and how do those two kind of relate, and how does one connect to the other in terms of society sexism leading to these views when an extremist takes it and, you know, runs with it in this way?
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out here that the movie treats the subject with great respect. I mean, at least I think so. Anyway, it doesn't belittle anything. It's used for a point.
There's certainly never any moment where it feels it makes light of it, or it makes it. I mean, I think did this being like one of the most mainstream representations of a transsexual, did that hurt the image of transsexuality in life? I think there's an argument to be made for that. I don't think anything in the movie itself disrespects it though and treats it with anything.
No, it's funny. It reminds me of another film we'll talk about actually, but I won't go to that for spoiler's sake. But here it's again, it makes a,
because it was a twist. Yeah, I know. You can't talk about that movie because it was a twist.
You know what I'm referring to.
I know what you're referring to. Yes.
Might do. But it makes a key point here of explicitly saying no, this person is not a transsexual.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This person is not that. It's not supposed to be representing that community.
Oh, absolutely does. It absolutely does do that. But most people won't remember that scene. Most people remember, you know, do me, but you do me. Most people remember those things, and I'm not necessarily blaming the movie for that necessarily. It's just it's that thing where if you keep putting the same type of person in a specific role in a movie over and over again, and always portraying them as crazy and always portraying them as, you know, as dangerous, eventually that becomes the trope and that becomes what people think of them as, and that's kind of the issue.
I agree, but I think it's unfair to blame the film when it does go out of its way to say no, this is not that.
Oh no, it does,
and it's a problem with just the.
Well, no, but that's
the popularity of the film.
That's why I'm saying, when you're saying it treats the subject with respect, the film does. I'm just saying outside the film, there is an argument to say that there is kind of a weird knock-on effect, regardless of how the film treated the material.
Yeah.
And that's just a cultural thing. That's just the film's such a big thing that when you say transsexual to someone, there's some people who will think of Buffalo Bill before they think of anything else. But it's worth knowing. It's worth bringing up that. I guess what I'm saying here, like with any media, it's kind of like the same when we talk about old movies that did actually have sexist or racist or homophobic elements to it. It's okay to like old movies that have these things in them, but it's important to just have the context and perspective of noting that they're there, enjoying everything else, and then saying, Not that you have to do that in this case, because again, the movie doesn't actually treat anything disrespectfully, but just have the awareness of, okay, here's the knock-on effect of it, and just understand that. So moving forward, you make different choices based on that.
Yeah. And you have to consider things being a product of their time, for good or good or bad. That's you can't change that now.
I guess what I'm saying is if you're making a movie like this now, I wouldn't make the villain like this. I would change it because times are different.
Absolutely.
Right. But hey, so. But yeah, Ted Levine's performance is good though. I mean, everyone quotes it puts the lotion in the basket. Yeah. Everyone does that. I'm pretty sure just about every man who's seen this movie, next time he's in the shower, tucks it between his legs just to see how it looks. You've all done it. You know you have.
I feel like you need a mirror to appreciate it properly, and I feel like you're getting it fogged up in the shower.
So you're saying that those of us who really want to see what it looks like do it outside of the shower?
Exactly. You do it afterwards.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if you want to do it properly, you know, go all out.
Okay. All right. But you've all done it. You all know you have. Well, after you've watched this, like, oh, is it that easy to hide it? But yeah, so he's very memorable. Very funny. Yes, because length affects hiding it behind your legs like that.
But don't deconstruct it. Just let it sit there.
If anything, it being longer would actually make it hold better. Because there's more to grab onto.
But look, if you deconstruct it, it makes it fall apart and it stops it being funny. It was funny. Accept it. Move on.
We had a really serious conversation about 2 minutes ago about the representation of transsexuals in film, and then it devolved into us making penis jokes at each other. That is the spectrum of which we operate.
I think that sums up this show pretty accurately.
But yes, Ted Levine's pretty good in the movie. Obviously Hopkins is fantastic, as we mentioned. All these little touches. I want to go back to the direction though. Another directing touch early on, again, building things. After she's ditched the doctor, right? And, you know, she kind of uses the charm back at him because he's like, oh, you could have told me this in my office and saved me the trip. It's like, oh, but then I wouldn't have had the pleasure of your company. She kind of almost throws the sexism back at him because that gets her out of it.
And he's like, he knows exactly what she's doing.
Yeah. And, you know, then she goes in. But I like when she goes in, there's this just, it's bathed in red light. There's like a danger light almost, right? And she's just bathed in red before she goes into this hellhole, this, you know, Arkham Asylum basement of horrors. But she's just bathed in red, and I like that. I like that. Again, it's a visual touch. It's danger. Red means danger. It's as simple as it gets in terms of direction, but it works. Yeah. And that happens throughout. And obviously, there's all the big moments everyone remembers. The cop being strung up in the cage, you know, after Hannibal's had his breakout scene. It's not violent often, but when it does get violent, it gets pretty violent.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments in terms of the violence is just after that scene when he sits up in the ambulance and rips off the face mask, you know, of the face that he cut off.
Yeah,
I think that's a fantastic moment. It's like, oh shit, that's dark as balls.
I mean, honestly, if I'm going to be critical about any of that escape stuff, because it's all really well done. Also, one of the cops is really recognizable. The one who gets strung up is recognizable. He was in a lot of small parts and other things. But there's a goofier cop who definitely popped up in small roles later on in other things, usually in comedies, I think. But he stuck out to me. But if I want to make a critique at all about any of this, is that I don't know if I'd buy that they wouldn't tell that the person lying there that they're taking an ambulance, like, that's not his real face. I have trouble accepting how well that face mask sits on it to be convincing.
I think it's just all the blood, right? Because it looks like he's just got slashes across his face. So it looks like it's just kind of falling off anyway.
I guess. I mean, I've not actually encountered this in my life, so I can't really be completely sure of myself, but I feel like I could tell. That's all I'm saying.
You would think that.
And I think a trained paramedic, more so, might notice as well.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess at this point they're like, just get him in. They're not like really focusing on it. They're just like, right, get going.
Yeah, I'm just nitpicking. I've seen the movie enough times that I'm just picking apart something that maybe doesn't work, and that's about Uh, don't take this as serious criticism. I obviously there's other great scenes. Are the scenes where they're doing the autopsy on the body. I particularly like the use of the camera, which kind of punctuates. It's almost like a rhythm section in the music. Is the camera as every time it clicks and you get the flash
and the whir.
Yeah, it's very Texas Chainsaw actually. Which, funnily enough, if you didn't know this is really well known trivia. But just in case you don't, parts of Buffalo Bill, or actually not even parts of Buffalo Bill, as well as Hannibal wearing the face mask, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Psycho are all, in part, kind of loosely based on the same serial killer, Ed Gein. There's a connection between all those movies. So just the fact that I was comparing it to Texas Chainsaw there made me go, oh, that's kind of funny, because there's actually...
Yeah.
Especially since the whole camera being iconic in that movie, and then having this sound here, aren't anything to do with Ed Gein. They happen to also have the same technique at one point.
Directional choice.
Yeah. But it's really well done, and of course there's the whole thing where they find the moth cocoon in the in the throat, and that signifies the transformation, just like Buffalo Bill wants to go through, and he's building a female bodysuit, which I question what he's doing to keep the skin from going, I don't know, bad. I guess.
I mean, I guess you'd treat it just like you would leather.
Yeah, I guess. What I'm saying is that by the time it's done, though, it's not going to feel like skin anymore, right? It's going to be like leather, as you say.
Yeah, no, probably.
Which is fine when I'm watching Texas Chainsaw and it's Leatherface. I mean, he's Leatherface. But he's actually wanting to build a female suit, if you will.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, don't think about it too much. Just let it be disgusting.
Just let it be disgusting, sure. Is that what you say before sex every time? Just let it be disgusting. Don't think about it. Just let it be disgusting.
Yeah, don't ruin the magic.
Oh dear. So the case is okay. The case is kind of interesting in parts. The chasing him around. There's a great fake out, of course, at the end where you think the FBI have got him because they've tracked down where he lives on record, and they're in a completely different city. And it's actually Clarice who ends up chapping on the door. Because you hear the door going off and he's down in his little basement and he gets up and he opens the door and it's Clarice. You're expecting the SWAT team and it's her. And she's there on her own. And it's kind of a nice thing because ultimately she has to defeat him on it. It's a little bit movie plot, if you will, that she has to do it herself.
Honestly, I think this is one of my few problems with the movie is the way this is set up. Because I think it's almost a little contrived, a little easy where... she's on the phone, they're in the plane, and it's like, and she's like, no, I've got this information. This is who you're looking for. And they're like, it's fine. We got the guy. We're going there now. Don't worry about it. Just relax. And it's almost like, okay, the information that they've got this from was from, I think, the first visit with Hannibal. So it kind of it has this moment where if that's true and they're going to the right place, nothing that she's done since then has mattered. And that just feels disingenuous. So immediately it's like, well, it's not going to be that. To me, that's alarm bells. So from the very first time I saw this movie.
No, I don't necessarily have a problem with that per se, because it's just like it took that long to check. Because what they've done is they've checked the hospitals where he's applied for a sex change, and they've kind of tracked him down through that. But I just took that as it took time, and now it's ready. Like they got that information.
No, that's true. But because that information was so early, it means that nothing else that has been learned since then has actually mattered. Nothing else has contributed to finding this guy. If you go with they found the right person through this name, through that check.
I think I'd dispute that to a point in the sense that the movie's less about finding Buffalo Bill and more about Khaleesi's arc. So therefore, it's not a big deal.
That's fair, and I'd say that could be would probably be my second critique of the movie is that at times the threat of Buffalo Bill can feel like an afterthought.
Oh, it does. Absolutely. I would actually say that as my biggest critique of the movie is that there's times, specifically when Hannibal gets moved city and he's in that cage and he has the meeting with the senator and then Clarice comes to see him and he has the big escape. That is like a solid 30-minute chunk in the movie where we don't even think... I mean, obviously they ask about him a couple of times, but we don't see him or think about him really for that 30
No,
minutes.
we don't really care as an audience.
It's Hannibal's movie at that point, and then when he gets his escape, all on the one scene at the end, Hannibal's gone. Like then it shifts back to Buffalo Bill, so it's got a bit of a weird structure in that sense. There's a bit of a weird structure there because of that, because Hannibal really takes over for a good 30 minutes, and then he disappears for the last like 30, 40.
Almost hurts that Hopkins is so damn good, because it almost steals the show a bit, and it takes away from the other stuff, because we're like, no, we want more of that. We want more Hannibal. Give us that. And it's like, fine, I suppose Buffalo Bill will do.
Yeah. It's no surprise they tried for years and eventually get a sequel of some kind.
Yeah, exactly.
Although not having Foster back kind of just made it null and void, to be honest, right away. It was like, nah. Without her, I mean, Julianne Moore's a great actress, but like it just doesn't feel like her.
It's not the same, is it?
Yeah. It was such a distinct performance. But no, I think that's a fair critique to have, is the weird structure and how it kind of, you forget about Buffalo Bill for a while, and it comes back. And it's fine at the start of the movie because they're kind of building up to him. You finally, and I like how every time it cuts to him doing something, they've just kind of figured something out. They'll be looking for his next victim, and then it cuts to him getting his victim, and then when they figure out, oh, he's going through a transformation, or he's got a moth, it cuts to the moths and all these like butterfly collection and stuff, and then like it always neatly transitions to like him once we learn about something with our characters, and then we see more of him, and it kind of works that way. But like I said, there's a big chunk of the film where that kind of disappears. So if we're critiquing it, that'd be probably my biggest one.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, and I will say it's actually really good. But I will say the night vision segment feels very out of nowhere at the end.
It does. I guess it's really well shot and directed.
Yeah, it's good. It's great.
Her panicking and just swinging around, hoping for the best. And we know, oh, he's right behind her.
Yeah.
You feel the terror of it, but it does feel kind of strange.
Is that because I like her being there on her own, as much as it's very movie kind of, just she happens to be the one who's going to be there to take him down, even though she's the trainee who's not been as involved. But it's a movie, you accept that. That's just kind of how the plot works. But it works really well because ultimately she's not going to have the help of the others, right? She's going to be on her own. She has to prove herself by taking down Buffalo Bill by herself, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. I like that part of it. I like that she realizes who he is just from like seeing the various evidence around, realizes he's not trustworthy, gets her gun ready, and then of course it becomes a bit of a chase, and he's got his little dungeon and all that, and the night vision thing's really well shot. It's really well done.
Do you know what I think is done? I mean, what's so feels almost wrong about it. It's the only time in the movie that we're inside his head. Like, it's his point of view. And we're never with that for the rest of the movie. We're with we're with Clarice, or we're with the victim in the pit. We see him every so often, doing his thing, doing his sewing machine, but we're not inside his head in the same way that this here is literally his point of view. And it's weird to have the big climax of the movie shift into that gear for that moment only.
But then, I mean, assuming you want to do this night vision thing, how else do you shoot it? You have to shoot it through the night vision goggles.
You have to, of course, yeah.
Or it doesn't work.
Which is why I think it's as good as it is, it kind of feels out of place.
It's funny because I feel like this moment, because she hears the click of the gun, she turns around and shoots them, and she wins, right? And that's how it ends. And it's funny because I feel like that it feels like a moment from another movie where that specifically pays off something she's been trying to overcome throughout the film. Like, let's say they set up earlier on that she was scared of the dark, or set up earlier on that she was like, she struggled with like aim or something. I don't know, but then this was the payoff that she finally did it at the end. And arguably, this is less cheesy that there was no setup for that, and it's just the moment, and she handles herself appropriately, and it works. But it felt like that moment from another movie, but without the setup for it.
It does. See, I think for me, I might have treated it different. I would have taken away the night vision entirely, and just stuck with her, and just seen her kind of fumbling around in the darkness, trying to see something, and struggling, and then hearing the sound and seeing her spin.
Yeah.
Because then, she shoots the window crashes, the light comes pouring in, and you can see again. I think maybe that's more effective in being with her in the terror of not knowing where he is and he could get her at any minute, than with him seeing her flailing around and us knowing exactly how close he is.
Yeah. But as much as we're critiquing it and saying maybe this is the way you should have done it, it still works entirely. Like, the entire thing is still suspenseful. You feel the gut wrench as he's coming towards her. It really works. It's just it's just thematically you step back and go, this is kind of weird that we do this at the end because it's out of nowhere.
Exactly.
But it does work. I can't fault it. So that's good stuff. I think I like that she knows that Hannibal won't come after her. As she puts it, he would consider it rude.
Yeah, I like. She got to know him too. She understands him to some degree.
Yeah,
and as she's saying that, it's like no, he'd consider it rude. It's like she gets it. She's like she understands his rules. Yeah, because he does have rules. He has some sort of code to himself.
Yeah. He's very. It's hard to gauge what he's going to do because he is such a wild card, essentially, in a very different kind of way because he is so violent, but he's so sophisticated.
But it does feel like it always feels like it's not random. It's not crazy. It's if you can get in his head, you could predict exactly what he was going to do. It feels like it's thought out, methodical. It's not just doing things. It doesn't feel random in that sense.
It's not random. It's just hard to comprehend his line of thought.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but very difficult and most people won't. Yeah. So, I mean, I think if I'm going to not critique per se, I think the couple of little flashbacks we get to our childhood didn't overly feel those.
Just unnecessary.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but it doesn't really serve anything. I don't think they enhance anything.
Because honestly, we get most of the important backstory when she's talking to Hannibal, and he wants to know about it. Hearing it in those scenes is way more effective, and it works very well.
Seeing his reaction and her kind of being honest, almost for the first time, being honest about it and talking about it. Probably hasn't done it very often, if at all.
In fact, this is the movie I always bring up when I talk about. I like not knowing what the title means until the movie gets to that point, because obviously you get to the point here where she's like, "Oh, I ran away from home after my dad died," and because I was staying at a ranch with these family members that I didn't really like, and these lambs were screaming in the middle of the night, and it was horrifying, and I ran away. And he's like, "Oh, that's why you want to help her. You want to, stop the screaming of the lambs." And I love that he doesn't say the title. He says it close enough that you get what the title means, but not the exact phrase. And I don't even think this is the best example in terms of the most effective use of this, but it's the popular one that I can always bring up to explain what I mean.
No, I think what I love is the title is the victory. But okay, she accomplished it, so. The Silence of the Lambs. That's it. It's done, right?
Yeah.
I do like that.
No, it's good. It's good stuff. So she's got her own personal stuff to get through, her own personal baggage. So on top of just the general sexism she's kind of fighting and these extra hurdles she's got to go through because of that, she has her own motivations for what to do this. Her relationship with her father, her wanting to help. Even that story with the lamb, she tried to save the lamb. She tried to take it, one with her.
Yeah, she tried to. She opened the gate and none of them would go.
Yeah, and I guess you could also say that relates to her trying to make a difference and it being difficult. No one's kind of, so you stand on your soapbox and say, "Hey, everyone, we should do this differently because this is awful," and no one really reacts and just wants to go about their business and be normal. And she's determined to try and make a difference. So, that's it. It's a really good movie. I think it's fantastic for a lot of reasons. It's fantastic performances from pretty much all the leads involved. It's fantastic direction. I think the story is pretty good, but not amazing.
It's probably its weakest link.
The weakest thing is the story, and it works well enough. It has some great moments, and it gives the story, it gives the characters what they need to have their arcs and their own journeys, if you will. I don't want to say stories again, but their own meaning. And I think the plot is where its weakest element is. That's not to criticize the screenplay, because obviously the story comes from the book, and then the screenplay, of course, is what gives the actors the tools to give their performance. So,
of course,
the dialogue is exceptional. The dialogue
it's absolutely incredible.
is on point.
You know,
Yeah.
we talk about the acting and the direction being good, and being great, and they are, but without that dialogue for them to deliver,
Yeah.
it's kind of nothing.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's one of these things where I feel like you had a solid story with really good characters, and you had good filmmakers, actors, and so on come along and turn it into a really, really great film. That is what this is. And it kind of reminds me of a simpler time where obviously this is an adaptation of a book, and these days everything's an adaptation of a book or a comic or a video game even, and that's like so much of what we actually get now. And I feel like back in these days, and I think it's even funny that this is the second Hannibal adaptation of some kind. Obviously, it was a different book, but the fact that Hannibal Lecter popped up in a different story before, that get turned into a movie, and here's another movie, and there was no that's connected to shared universe or anything. Like there was none of that thought.
It was fine to do a different take.
Yeah, it was just, no, let's just take that book and make a great movie, and that's what they did. And
my feelings on the Lord of the Rings TV show that's coming from Amazon. And there was a little bit ago, there was that rumor that, oh no, Peter Jackson's involved and we're going to connect to that. And I was like, no, don't. I love that trilogy, right? But just do your own thing. And this is, you're saying, you love Manhunter, but you love that this is just different, right?
Yeah, it's a completely different tone, different style. There is the classic debate about this being a horror film or not, and people who get very upset that they seem to only want to call it a thriller because the Oscars and so on wouldn't accept a horror film. And it's funny because I actually, as much as I can see the argument for why you would call it a horror film, I personally wouldn't.
No, I think it focuses, as much as we say, Buffalo Bill kind of takes a back seat. That investigation is the driving force still. Yeah,
and obviously you do get some horror movies where there is a very strong investigative element, but typically, if the investigation is the focus of the film, it's more of a thriller to me than a horror movie. And it's just about the focus. It's just about what they choose to be the main part of the film.
Yeah, I think there are moments of horror, like pretty much everything with Buffalo Bill, and some of the scenes with Hannibal.
Yeah, with his escape.
Not all of them.
Specifically.
Yes, with his escape. But that's not enough for me to say this is a horror film.
Yeah, I wouldn't. But I mean, this is very subjective. Your mileage may vary. Like for you, for you, hell, I mean, Seven might fall into horror I mean, again, I wouldn't. I'd say this is also that's a thriller, like this one is. But
yeah, I wonder if it depends on how much you have experience with horror. Like maybe if you don't have a massive experience with horror movies, you think, okay, no, this is a horror movie. But if you've watched a lot of them, you can go, no,
I feel like some people who argue this is a horror film, though, are people who are avid horror viewers who are like, no, this is a horror film.
Really?
Stop calling it a thriller because you're ashamed of horror. I'm like, no, I love horror. Like, horror's like one of my favorite genres.
Yeah, I don't love it as much as you, but I'm quite happy throwing a horror film, no problem.
Yeah.
This just isn't one.
This is not a prejudice against horror films. This is just me thinking this is something different, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, no, I think it was a far more egregious error last year when at the Oscars they were calling Get Out a psychological thriller. It's like no, that one's a horror.
Yes, social horror, as Peele put it, which I actually think is a very apt title or a subgenre, if you will, for that. But yeah, so I mean, it's not exactly a controversy, but it's something that always comes up with films like this and Seven and a couple of other ones, and I always kind of like, nah, not really.
I know when we do our lists, we don't do a horror list for this show because you do that on Screams After Midnight. But if we did do a horror list, I don't think we'd say this was eligible.
No, me and Tim did do a horror. We did a top 100 last year, and this was not eligible.
Did you even have that question between you? Of like,
no, I think
it's just like no.
Nah, Tim's in the same mindset as us with us. I think.
Yeah.
As scary as it is to think of Tim being in the same mindset as you, because Tim's a crazy man.
Yeah, that's not you. If your thoughts align up with Tim, yeah. Scary times. That's the true horror.
Yes, that's the true horror of it all. Yeah, no, it's one of the first movies I think of when I think of 90s movies, when I think of thrillers. When you think of when I say I like Manhunter more, what I wanted, obviously I think we should do an episode on that at some point, so I don't want to go into it too much, and I'd have to rewatch it to really sit down. But for me, that movie is just about this style. Like it's just so. It's like it's a very colourful movie. I mentioned the when she's bathed in red light at one point. That movie is like constantly bathed in colours, and it's got synth. It's got this style to it. Obviously the main character's what's his name from the TV show? The main character in that.
Oh,
Detective
Will.
Well, yeah. Well, whatever his name is, he's the main character. And he's investigating the crimes of the killer, and of course, if you don't know, Manhunter was eventually remade into Red Dragon. That's the same story,
which no one likes.
Yeah, no one. Well, Brett Ratner directed it.
Says it all.
There you go. But like it's like him doing his Sherlock Holmes things. There's great scenes in that movie where he just sits down in the crime scene and he just like thinks about it, and as all the music's playing, it's just there's a mood to that film that I just really like. But it's very different than this. This is going for dark horrors of the world, whereas that movie goes for a bit more almost dreamlike, like in the city we have to catch the killer kind of thing. Yeah. And Hannibal, who funnily enough is played by Brian Cox in that movie, who's a Scottish actor who has popped up in a bunch of stuff over the years. You'll know his face. I mean, obviously Braveheart because Scottish, but he he's in the Ring remake. He was in the second X-Men movie, X-Men 2, and he was in he's been in a bunch of things over the years. But
he's one of those that even if you don't know his name, Google him, you'll recognize him.
He was in one or two of the Bourne movies. It pops up all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I actually like that a bit more, but that's purely a subjective style thing that movie just clicks with me in a way. But this one is fantastic, and just for the record, because I don't want to do an episode on any of the movies that came after this. I like Ridley Scott when he's good, and these days that's less often. But Hannibal, I think, is a boring ass movie. I hate that movie.
Fair enough.
It's a boring ass movie, and I was terrified of season 3 of because I wasn't even as big on Hannibal the show as most people were, but I was terrified of season 3 because it felt like it was doing the Hannibal movie, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna hate this.
Yeah, I love the first 2 seasons of that show. I like more than you, like on par with the people who really love that show.
Yeah.
I'm up there. And then I didn't even finish season 3.
Yeah,
yeah.
The first half of season 3 especially was absolutely dire. It was.
Yeah, I didn't get past. I know people said the second half was better, but I didn't get past that.
I mean, it was better because it wasn't as garbage. But I mean, for me, it was a lost cause at that point. So
that's fair.
But I hate that. I never saw Red Dragon. I had no interest in seeing a Brett Ratner prequel to Silence of the Lambs. You kidding me?
Why would you?
And I never saw Hannibal Rising, which just sounds like a schlocky B-movie attempt of doing like a horror movie with Hannibal in it.
That sounds like any excuse to have another one.
Yeah, and it's not even I think Anthony Hopkins may have had like a cameo, like bookending or something like that. But it was some other young actor who's doing young Hannibal Lecter things.
Yeah, I never saw it, but I can picture the cheap early 2000s horror poster in my head. That's the cover for the Blu-ray.
It's funny actually. I think it was late 2000s, but
it's got the style.
Oh sure,
of
yeah.
an early 2000s.
I'm curious. So I'm gonna look it up. Hannibal. It's even a horrible title. Hannibal Rising. I mean, at least with Red Dragon, I got the point was we want to do Manhunter, but with Anthony Hopkins in it.
Yeah, I get the appeal of that, right?
But no interest. It was 2007 Hannibal Rising, and it was 2 hours long. Are you kidding me?
But look at that poster. I'm not sure if it's showing you where you're looking.
Oh, yeah, I've seen the poster. Yeah.
It's like 2002, 2003.
Do you know what it looks like? Are you familiar with the poster for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake?
Yeah.
Where it's all black and you just see like the sort of the goldy yellowy sort of mask of Leatherface coming in. It's that, but it's like Hannibal in his face mask. Which why does he have that? Right. Why does he have that before Silence of the Lambs? Or before Red Dragon even? I mean, I guess they caught him at the end of the movie, I guess, but still.
Because people like that look. Yes. It's iconic.
It's iconic.
It is. It's an iconic look, but it's just a cheap cash-in, isn't it?
Hey, Senator, love your shoes. That's a good line.
Yeah.
I'm quoting the movie we just watched. You shouldn't be this
I
dumbfounded
know.
by that moment.
I wasn't. I'm just like, wasn't that impressed by it.
Well, that
By
line?
by you bringing it up here, it felt
Huh?
irrelevant.
I don't know. I just thought of it because it's the scene where he's wearing that mask. It was a good moment.
Fair enough.
How exactly did Hannibal get the pen actually that he escapes with to use as a lockpick? Because he's strapped to a trolley when the doctor comes in, and then later on we see him and he's just strapped with a mask on and a straitjacket. I don't know. How did he pick up that pen? It was lying in the bed.
No, it's a mystery. Very very clever way of swiping it as they wheel him past.
Because the doctor made it sound like they were literally just going to wheel him out from there. Like, it's time to go. We're leaving right now.
Yeah, it's true.
Because of course we didn't even mention that they make a kind of a bluff deal, and then the doctor kind of proves that it's false, and then makes his own deal because he wants to be famous and blah 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 blah. He's wonderfully sleazy, by the way. He's got such a shit-eating grin.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, and of course
he enjoys so much when they throw Clarice out, and he's like, no, we've got a real deal.
Yeah, and then of course it's implied at the end that the final line is, "I'm having an old friend for dinner," and he's following him into the crowd or wherever he's hiding, because he knows Hannibal's on the loose, and he's been awful enough to him that he knows he's coming for him.
Yeah, exactly.
He's coming. You're doomed. But yeah, so no. I guess we'll wrap up. I guess I mean, this is one of these ones where it's almost harder to talk about because it's such a well-known and regarded film.
Done to death.
Yeah, everyone. We don't have to explain why it's good.
I think that's almost why we go harder to get some critiques.
Yes,
right?
yes. It's like, all these films that are so well regarded, they're not perfect. There are critiques to make about them, but that doesn't dispute the fact, or doesn't take away from the fact that they are so good and well remembered for a reason. There's all these other things that work that make them memorable.
But we almost spend less time talking about here's all the good things because everyone knows the good things.
Yeah,
everyone spoke to about those to death. So just try and come at it from a slightly different angle.
And I think the reason why I like doing that specifically is because people, especially on the internet, people are so, it's like everything's either a 10 or a 1, right? And I feel like it's important to say, no, even the classics, even the best of the best, aren't perfect all the way through. There's things you can critique and take apart and say, hey, here's something that didn't work. It's important to know that things were fantastic despite a few flaws. Everything has flaws, all of them. Even the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer has some flaws.
It has some truly shy episodes.
Has a couple.
Yeah.
Has a couple. But hey, that sounds alarms. We should rate the film. What are you rating it, Connor?
I'm gonna give it an 8.5. I think it's excellent, direction, acting, as we spoke about. But I think the pacing and Buffalo Bill feeling like an afterthought at times does bring it down a touch.
Actually, that was the exact score that I had decided on before we even started recording. I'd said 8.5 to myself, so I'm going with 8.5. Obviously, it's great. It's fantastic. But yeah, I mean, it's not one of my favorites of all time, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's really good, really damn great.
It's very good. Obviously, it was good enough to appear, relatively highly on both of our 90s lists.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great. So that's Silence of the Lambs, and we mentioned this was the winner of the Patreon vote. You can, of course, go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can sign up to be a patron. At the $5 tier, you get to vote once a month. Worth mentioning right now, because you get to vote for Streams After Midnight as well, because we're voting for October right now, there's actually 3 votes up for Streams After Midnight. There's a lot of voting going on, because it's Octoberthon, so there's some exciting stuff going on there. And then the theme for this month's vote for In Flux is they're all biopics, or biopics. Biopics? Biopics. Is it biopics or biopics?
I don't know. I always just say biopics.
Because that sounds like you're talking about like biology or something like that. Whereas biopics is like clearly it's biography and picture.
That's probably the linguistic root.
Yes.
But people just say biopics because it looks more like a word.
True. But yeah, so there's 4 biopics up for vote, so our patrons can vote on that. So make sure you go along if you're a patron and vote. And if you're thinking about it, do that too. And of course, you can support us for as little as $1. Every penny is important. Every penny is fantastic, and we appreciate it loads. So you can do that. Or you can also submit movies to the Vault, which is a to-do list of movies that our patrons get to submit to as well. So you can do that. The link to the list is public itself. You can click in the link in the description and see that. But if you want to submit films to it, you have to be a patron, so you can go look at that. But that is us. So thank you very much. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. You can get us on Twitter. I'm at Wibble89. Connor's at ConnorRyan94. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching movies, guys, and we'll see you next time.